The homeless man helped a beautiful millionaire CEO with a flat tire. Days later, his life changed forever. The rain fell steadily, tapping rhythmically against the pavement and creating shimmering reflections of the flickering streetlights. The normally bustling streets of New York City's outskirts were now eerily quiet, save for the occasional whoosh of passing cars. The chill in the air seeped through Olivia Bennett's designer coat as she stood beside her sleek black Bentley, staring helplessly at the flat tire. Her perfectly manicured fingers trembled slightly as she scrolled through her phone, but there was no signal. She sighed in frustration, glancing down the desolate street. Tom, her assistant, was supposed to accompany her tonight, but an unexpected family emergency had left her alone, something she wasn't used to. "Great, just great," she muttered under her breath, kicking the tire lightly, causing her stiletto to slip on the wet ground. A shadow shifted nearby. Under the dim glow of the street lamp, David Carter, clad in a worn-out jacket and tattered jeans, watched her from across the street. He had been rummaging through a nearby dumpster, searching for something, anything, that could help him get through another cold night. But now, his attention was drawn to the woman standing alone by her expensive car. His instincts kicked in. She needed help. Tucking his hands into his pockets, David hesitated before stepping into the street, rain soaking through his threadbare clothes. His footsteps echoed lightly against the wet asphalt as he approached her. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his voice deep yet calm. Olivia spun around, her eyes wide with alarm. She instinctively clutched her purse tighter, taking a cautious step back. "I'm sorry, but I don't have any cash," she said quickly, her voice laced with tension. David raised his hands in a non-threatening gesture, rain dripping from his dark hair. "I'm not asking for money. I just noticed your tire's flat. Thought you might need some help." Olivia's eyes narrowed. "And you expect me to believe that?" David chuckled softly, a tired but genuine sound. "I get it. You don't trust me, but I used to be a mechanic. I know my way around a car, if you'll let me take a look." She hesitated, glancing at her car, then back at him. The rain was getting heavier, and she could feel her patience wearing thin. "Fine," she said, crossing her arms, "but I'm watching you." David gave her a small nod, then knelt down beside the car. His hands, rough and calloused, moved with surprising precision as he assessed the damage. He ran his fingers along the tire tread, feeling the puncture. Olivia stood above him, holding her phone tightly, but as she watched him work, something about his movements felt familiar. There was no hesitation, no fumbling. He knew what he was doing. "Looks like a sharp object punctured it. I can patch it up enough to get you where you need to go," David said, wiping rainwater from his brow. "You carry tools with you?" Olivia asked, still skeptical. David gave a short laugh. "Not exactly, but I make do." From a worn backpack slung over his shoulder, he pulled out a small multi-tool and a few supplies he had collected over the months. Olivia raised an eyebrow but said nothing. As David worked diligently in the rain, Olivia found herself watching him closely. There was something different about him. He wasn't like the other homeless people she had encountered. There was a quiet confidence in his demeanor, a sense of pride in what he was doing. "So, what's your story?" Olivia asked after a moment of silence. David didn't look up. "It's a long one," he said simply. "I have time," she replied, surprising herself. David paused, then glanced at her. "I used to be an engineer. Had a good job at home. Then, well, life happened." Olivia frowned. "Life?" David gave her a sad smile. "Lost my job during the financial crisis. Everything fell apart after that. It's been hard to get back on my feet." She felt a pang of something she couldn't quite identify. Pity? Sympathy? No. Understanding. She had worked hard to build her empire, but she knew how fragile success could be. After a few more minutes, David stood up, wiping his hands on his jeans. "There. It's not perfect, but it'll get you to a mechanic." Olivia looked at the tire and then back at him, impressed despite herself. "You did this with just that?" David shrugged. "You learn to be resourceful when you don't have much." She stared at him for a moment before reaching into her purse. "Let me pay you for your help." David raised a hand to stop her. "No need. Just glad I could help." Olivia frowned. "Come on, you didn't have to do this. Take it, please." David shook his head. "I did it because it was the right thing to do. Money won't change that." For a moment, Olivia didn't know what to say. She was used to people doing things for her with expectations. But this man, someone who had so little, wanted nothing in return. David picked up his backpack, preparing to leave. Take care, Mom." As he turned to walk away, Olivia found herself calling after him, "Wait." He turned back, rain streaming down his face. "What's your name?" she asked, her voice softer now. David hesitated, then gave her a small smile. David Carter." Olivia nodded, tucking a strand of wet hair behind her ear. "Thank you, David. I won't forget this." He nodded and disappeared into the darkness, leaving Olivia standing by her car, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time: curiosity. As she got back into her car, she couldn't shake the thought of David. Who was he really? And why did she feel like this encounter meant more than just a flat tire? The following morning, Olivia Bennett sat in her sleek, glass-walled office high above the bustling streets of New York City. The usual hum of productivity surrounded her, phones ringing, assistants shuffling papers, and the occasional knock at her door. But today Olivia wasn't focused on the endless stream of reports and business meetings that filled her schedule. Her mind was elsewhere, on him. She tapped a pen against her desk, staring out at the skyline, her thoughts drifting back to the rain-soaked street, the broken tire, and the man who had unexpectedly come to her rescue, David Carter. There was something about him she couldn't shake: his quiet confidence, his refusal to accept money, and the undeniable sense that he wasn't where he was meant to be. Olivia prided herself on her ability to read people, and David didn't fit the mold of a typical homeless man. A knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Come in, Tom," she called. Her assistant, Tom Parker, entered, holding a stack of documents and an inquisitive expression. "You seem distracted. Something on your mind?" Olivia hesitated before speaking. "Actually, yes. Tom, I need you to find out everything you can about someone. His name is David Carter. He helped me last night when my car broke down." Tom raised an eyebrow but said nothing, instead jotting down the name. "Do you have any other details?" "He said he used to be an engineer, but now he's living on the streets, I guess. I want to know why." Tom gave her a curious glance but nodded. "I'll see what I can find." As he left, Olivia leaned back in her chair, her fingers interlocked under her chin. Something deep inside her, something she rarely felt, guilt perhaps, compassion, pushed her to do this. Meanwhile, across town, David Carter sat on a park bench, watching people pass by with a distant gaze. The damp chill from last night's rain still clung to his worn clothes, but his mind was elsewhere. His encounter with Olivia had stirred something inside him, something he had buried for years. He took a deep breath, rubbing his hands together to keep warm. He had once been like those men in suits, rushing to work, checking their watches, thinking the world revolved around their ambitions. And now, here he was, sitting on the sidelines, a ghost in the city he once called home. "David?" A familiar voice pulled him from his thoughts. He turned to see Mike Reynolds, an old friend from his engineering days, now looking more polished in a tailored suit and expensive shoes. David straightened, trying to hide his worn-out appearance. "Mike, long time." Mike's face was a mixture of shock and concern. Wow, what happened to you? Last I heard you were doing great." David sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "Life happened. The layoffs, losing my apartment, everything just spiraled." Mike sat down beside him, shaking his head. "I can't believe it. You were one of the best engineers we had, David. You can't stay like this forever. Have you thought about getting back on your feet?" David let out a dry chuckle. "And do what? No one's going to hire a guy like me anymore." Mike patted his back. "That's where you're wrong. I might know someone willing to give you a shot. Let me help you." David looked at him skeptically. "Why would you do that?" Mike smiled. "Because you were there for me when I needed help, and I know you're better than this." David hesitated, but deep down, he knew Mike was right. Maybe it was time to stop running from his past and start facing it. At the same time, back at Olivia's office, Tom walked back in, holding a file folder in his hands. Olivia looked up from her laptop expectantly. "You were right, Olivia. David Carter isn't just any homeless man." Tom placed the folder on her desk and continued. "He used to be a senior mechanical engineer at Jensen Technologies. He was making six figures, had a great career, until the 2008 financial crash hit. Lost everything. After that, he struggled to find steady work and eventually ended up on the streets." Olivia's eyes scanned the documents, each page painting a clearer picture of the man she met. A man who once had a life very different from the one he was living now. He was married too, but after losing his job, his wife left him, and he lost their home. "It's been a rough road since," Tom added. Olivia felt a lump form in her throat. She couldn't imagine losing everything in such a devastating way. It made her feel privileged, almost guilty for the life she had taken for granted. She closed the folder and stood up. "I want to find him." Tom looked at her with mild surprise. "You're serious?" "Yes. There's something about him, Tom. I can't explain it, but I need to see if he's willing to change his life." As Olivia stepped out of her office later that afternoon, she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of purpose. The thought of David, alone and struggling, bothered her in a way she hadn't expected. At the same time, David sat at the park bench, staring at the worn resume Mike had handed him. Could he really give life another shot? As fate would have it, Olivia's car turned the corner of the park, and through the windshield, she spotted him sitting alone. She parked the car, took a deep breath, and stepped out. David looked up as she approached, surprise flickering in his eyes. "We meet again, David," Olivia said, offering a small smile. David stood up, still unsure what to make of her sudden appearance. "Miss Bennett, didn't expect to see you again." Olivia tilted her head. "I was hoping we could talk. Over coffee, perhaps?" David hesitated, then nodded. "All right, coffee sounds good." And with that, the two of them walked toward the nearest cafe, two people from completely different worlds, yet somehow, their paths had intertwined in a way neither of them had expected. David sat hunched over on an old bench at a weathered bus stop, his hands tucked deep into the pockets of his ragged coat. The cool breeze of the early morning swept through the empty streets, carrying the faint hum of distant traffic. He stared at the cracked pavement beneath his feet, lost in thought. The encounter with Olivia Bennett had left him feeling unsettled, hopeful but also cautious. The sound of approaching heels broke his thoughts. He looked up and saw Olivia standing before him, her poised figure sharply contrasting the rundown surroundings. Her eyes were filled with determination, the same look he had seen when she stood in the rain next to her broken car. "David, I've been looking for you," Olivia said, her voice softer than he expected. He shifted uncomfortably. "Why? I figured we were done after the car thing." Olivia crossed her arms, a small smile playing on her lips. "I wasn't done. I've been thinking a lot about you, about what you said that night. You're more than what you think you are, David, and I want to help." David sighed, shaking his head. "Look, Olivia, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I don't need charity." She took a step closer. "It's not charity, David. It's an opportunity. I have a position open at my company in the maintenance department. Nothing fancy, but it's honest work. And I know you're more than qualified." David frowned. "I don't know. It's been years since I've done real work. I might not be the same guy I used to be." Olivia smiled encouragingly. "Maybe, but I think everyone deserves a second chance, including you. Just come in tomorrow, meet the team. No pressure. If you don't like it, you can walk away." David studied her for a long moment. A part of him wanted to reject the offer, pride, fear, doubt. But another part of him, the part that once thrived on challenges and purpose, told him this might be his only chance to turn things around. Finally, he exhaled and nodded. "All right, I'll give it a shot." The next morning, David stood nervously in front of the towering glass skyscraper that bore the name Bennett Enterprises. His reflection in the pristine doors showed a man who barely recognized himself, messy hair, worn clothes, eyes filled with uncertainty. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. The receptionist, a young woman with a polite but cautious smile, led him to the maintenance department. Olivia had arranged for him to work under Mr. Reynolds, the facility manager. Reynolds, a gruff but fair man in his 50s, eyed David skeptically. "Miss Bennett says you've got experience with engineering work?" David nodded. "Yeah, used to be a mechanical engineer." Reynolds handed him a set of tools. "Let's see what you got. The heating system in the east wing's acting up. Think you can handle it?" David felt a familiar thrill in his chest, the challenge of fixing something, of using his hands and mind again. "Yeah, I think I can." Hours passed and David threw himself into the work. His hands moved with practiced precision, years of dormant skills coming back to life. By noon, the heating system was running perfectly, and Reynolds watched in impressed silence. "Not bad, Carter, not bad," he muttered. Days turned into weeks, and David gradually found his rhythm. His colleagues, initially wary of him, warmed up as they saw his dedication and expertise. He worked hard, never complained, and tackled every challenge with a quiet confidence. Meanwhile, Olivia found herself paying closer attention to him. She would occasionally walk through the maintenance areas under the guise of routine checks, but in reality, she wanted to see him in action. And each time, she was more impressed. One evening, as Olivia passed by the maintenance bay, she overheard two employees talking about David. "The guy's a genius. Did you see how fast he fixed the cooling system today?" one said. "Yeah, but where did Miss Bennett even find him? He's too good to just be working here." Olivia smiled to herself. She had known from the start that David was special. The company's annual investor gala arrived, a grand event where the elite of the business world gathered to discuss future projects and investments. Olivia decided, at the last minute, to introduce David as a part of her company's turnaround initiative, showcasing his skills without revealing his past. Dressed in a simple but neat suit she had provided for him, David stood beside Olivia in the lavish ballroom, feeling out of place among the polished guests. When Olivia introduced him to a group of investors, David spoke with ease about technical innovations and the efficiency improvements he had implemented in the company's facilities. His passion shone through, and the investors nodded in approval. Mark Caldwell, a sharp-eyed business partner of Olivia's, watched David with a suspicious look. "Interesting insights, Mr. Carter. I don't believe we've met before. What's your background?" David stiffened slightly, but Olivia smoothly interjected. "David's experience comes from years of hands-on engineering work. He's been an invaluable addition to the team." Mark wasn't convinced. "I'd like to hear more about your previous experience sometime, David. You seem different." David forced a smile, feeling the weight of his past creeping in again. Olivia sensed his unease and gently placed a hand on his arm. "David's work speaks for itself, doesn't it, Mark?" Mark nodded slowly, but suspicion lingered in his eyes. Later that night, Olivia found David standing alone on the balcony, staring at the city skyline. "You did great tonight," she said softly. David sighed. "I don't belong here, Olivia." She shook her head. "That's not true. You belong anywhere you choose to be. Don't let your past define you." David turned to her, a faint smile playing on his lips. "You really believe that, don't you?" Olivia met his gaze, her eyes filled with sincerity. "Yes, and I think it's time you start believing it too." David nodded, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The days that followed the investor gala were different. The once formal interactions between Olivia and David gradually turned into something more, something neither of them had anticipated. Olivia found herself drawn to David's quiet resilience, his unwavering determination, and the way he approached life with a humility she rarely encountered in her world of wealth and power. David, on the other hand, was cautious. He had spent years keeping people at a distance, convinced that no one would truly understand his struggles. But Olivia, she was different. She didn't look at him with pity or judgment. She looked at him like he was worthy of being seen. One evening, Olivia found David working late in the maintenance wing of her company, tightening a few bolts on a heating panel. She stood silently for a moment, watching him, how focused he was, how his brow furrowed in concentration. It was a side of him that intrigued her. "You're always the last one to leave, aren't you?" Olivia said softly, stepping closer. David glanced up, offering a small smile. "Old habits die hard. I like keeping busy." Olivia leaned against the nearby wall. "You know, you don't have to prove anything to me." David sighed, wiping his hands on a rag. "I guess part of me feels like I do. When you've been at the bottom, it's hard to believe you're really climbing up." She studied him for a moment before asking, "What happened, David? What made you end up where you were?" David hesitated, his eyes darkening with the weight of memories. "I made a lot of mistakes, Olivia. I trusted the wrong people, invested in the wrong things. When the financial crisis hit, everything crumbled. My career, my home, my marriage." Olivia's expression softened. "Your wife?" David nodded. "She left when things got hard. I can't blame her, but it broke me in ways I never thought possible." Olivia stepped closer, placing a comforting hand on his arm. "You're stronger than you think, David. Not many people could pick themselves up the way you have." David looked down at her hand, then up into her eyes. He saw something in them that unnerved him, genuine care. It had been so long since anyone looked at him that way. Over the following weeks, Olivia and David began spending more time together, long conversations after work, shared cups of coffee in the break room, and occasional lunch breaks where Olivia insisted on treating him despite his protests. One afternoon, as they sat outside on a park bench near the office, Olivia laughed at one of David's dry remarks. "You know, David, you're funnier than I expected," she teased, stirring her lat. David smirked. I guess homelessness does wonders for your sense of humor." She frowned slightly, nudging him playfully. "Hey, stop that. You're more than your past, you know." David looked at her thoughtfully. "You're the only person who says that like you actually believe it." "Because I do," Olivia said, her voice sincere. "And I think you should too." For the first time in a long while, David felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. One evening, Olivia invited David to take a walk through Central Park. The city lights flickered in the distance, and the crisp air carried the faint scent of blooming flowers. It was peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaotic world they both came from. They walked in silence for a while, until Olivia spoke. "You know, people think that being a CEO means having it all, but sometimes it's the loneliest place to be." David looked at her, surprised by the vulnerability in her voice. "I get that. When you're on top, it's hard to know who's really there for you." She sighed. "Exactly. Everyone expects me to have all the answers, to always be in control. But deep down, I just want to be seen for who I really am." David nodded in understanding. "I think we're more alike than we realize." A comfortable silence settled between them, and for the first time, Olivia felt she could truly be herself around him, not the CEO, not the businesswoman, just Olivia. Without thinking, she reached out and gently took David's hand. He stiffened for a brief moment, then relaxed, letting his fingers intertwine with hers. No words were exchanged, but in that moment, something changed. As they reached the edge of the park, Olivia finally spoke. "David, I don't know where this is going, but I don't want to overthink it." David chuckled softly. "For once, I think I agree. Let's just see where it takes us." With their hands still clasped together, they walked back toward the city lights, feeling something neither of them had felt in a long time: hope, trust, and the stirrings of something that could be much more. The glow of the city lights reflected off the towering glass walls of Bennett Enterprises, casting long shadows across the boardroom where Olivia sat, her fingers tapping anxiously against the sleek mahogany table. Across from her sat Mark Caldwell, one of the company's senior partners and a man notorious for his sharp business instincts and relentless pursuit of corporate perfection. Tonight, however, his focus wasn't on quarterly profits or expansion strategies. It was on David Carter. Mark leaned forward, a smug smirk tugging at the corners of his lips as he slid a folder across the table. "You might want to take a look at this, Olivia, before things get out of hand." Olivia's heart pounded as she opened the folder. There it was, in black and white, David's entire past laid bare. His once promising career, the financial collapse that led to his downfall, and most damning of all, his years living on the streets. "This man you've so graciously taken under your wing," Mark continued, his voice dripping with condescension, "was once an esteemed engineer. But now? He's nothing more than a failed man clinging to the scraps of his past." Olivia clenched her fists, swallowing the rising anger in her throat. "And what exactly are you trying to achieve with this, Mark?" Mark shrugged. "Just looking out for the company. You know how delicate our image is. Investors won't be thrilled to hear that their CEO is getting involved with, well, let's just say, a questionable individual." "David isn't questionable," Olivia snapped. "He's talented, hardworking, and more honest than most of the people in this room." Mark's smirk widened. "Then why didn't he tell you the truth himself? Or were you too blinded to see it?" Later that night, Olivia found David waiting for her outside her office. His face was set in stone, and she knew instantly that he had heard everything. "David, she began, but he cut her off. "It's okay, Olivia. I know what they're saying." His voice was calm but distant. "And they're right. I should have told you sooner. I should have been honest from the start." Olivia's eyes softened. "You didn't have to." "I don't care about your past, David. I care about who you are now." He shook his head. "But they do. And it's affecting you, Olivia. I don't want to be the reason your reputation takes a hit." She grabbed his hands, desperation lacing her voice. "Don't say that. You belong here. We'll figure this out together." David looked down, his jaw tightening. "No, Olivia. This world, it's not for me. I'm not the man you need me to be." He pulled away gently, his eyes filled with sorrow. "Maybe it's better if I leave." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes as she watched him walk away, feeling helpless for the first time in a long time. The next morning, the headlines were everywhere. CEO Olivia Bennett involved with former homeless man, investors concerned. From engineer to beggar, the shocking truth behind Bennett Enterprises' new employee. The boardroom was tense as Olivia faced a sea of skeptical faces. "This is unacceptable, Olivia. One board member said sternly, "We cannot afford this kind of negative publicity. The shareholders are panicking." Another chimed in, "If you don't distance yourself from him, we might have to consider drastic measures." Olivia stood up, her voice unwavering despite the turmoil in her chest. "So what are you saying? That a man who lost everything doesn't deserve a second chance? That his entire worth is measured by one failure?" The room fell silent. "David Carter is more than his past, and I won't stand by and let his story be twisted into something it's not." The board members exchanged glances, but Olivia wasn't done. "If we can't stand for redemption and growth, then what do we stand for?" Later that day, Olivia called for a press conference. Cameras flashed as she stepped up to the podium, the murmurs of speculation filling the air. She took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the crowd. There has been a lot of talk about David Carter, a man who has been unfairly judged for his past. Silence fell over the room. "Let me set the record straight. Yes, David was once homeless. Yes, he faced hardships. But what defines a person isn't where they've been, it's where they choose to go." She continued, her voice strong and filled with conviction. "David has shown strength, resilience, and an unwavering dedication to turning his life around. And if my company, my values, and my leadership mean anything, it's that we believe in second chances." Reporters scribbled furiously, but Olivia wasn't finished. "I stand by David Carter, not because I feel sorry for him, but because I believe in him. And if that's something to be criticized for, so be it." Applause broke out unexpectedly from a section of the audience. Olivia's eyes flickered toward the entrance, and there he was, David, standing in the back, watching her with a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. After the press conference, Olivia found David waiting for her outside the building. He looked at her, his eyes filled with something she hadn't seen before, hope. "You didn't have to do that, Olivia," he said softly. She smiled, stepping closer. "Yes, I did, because you're worth it." David exhaled slowly, his walls slowly crumbling. "I don't know how to thank you." Olivia reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "Stay. Let's show them what you're really capable of." David nodded, his eyes locked with hers. "All right, let's do this together." And for the first time in years, he felt like he belonged. David sat alone in his small rented apartment, the weight of the past few weeks pressing down on him. The words Olivia had spoken at the press conference echoed in his mind, words of belief, of trust, of second chances. Could he really face his past and rebuild his life? He ran a hand through his hair, staring at the worn resume in front of him. Years ago, this document had been filled with accomplishments, job offers, and ambitious plans. Now, it felt like a relic of a life he barely recognized. But Olivia had given him something he hadn't felt in a long time, hope. He picked up his phone, scrolling through old contacts, and with a deep breath, dialed the number of an old colleague, Mike Reynolds. "David? Is this really you?" Mike's voice carried surprise and a hint of skepticism. "Yeah, it's me. I need your help." There was a pause before Mike spoke again. "You ready to come back?" David swallowed hard. "I think so." With Olivia's encouragement, David began to take small but meaningful steps toward rebuilding his life. She introduced him to key contacts in the industry, provided guidance on forming a small consulting firm, and even helped him secure his first few clients. Their conversations were no longer just about work, they became something deeper. Olivia's unwavering support pushed David to see himself in a new light, not as a failure, but as someone capable of rising again. One afternoon, as they sat in Olivia's office, going over the business plan she had helped him draft, David leaned back in his chair and studied her. "Why are you doing all this for me, Olivia?" he asked softly. She looked at him with a small smile. "Because I believe in you, David. And because I know what it's like to fight for something when no one else believes in you." David felt his chest tighten. "I won't let you down." "You won't," she said confidently. "Now let's show everyone else what you're capable of." The day finally came when David had to prove himself. Olivia arranged for him to present his new consulting firm's proposal at a high-profile Bennett Enterprises board meeting. The same board that had once scrutinized him, doubted him, and questioned his worth. Standing outside the glass doors, David took a deep breath. Olivia reached out, gently touching his arm. "You've got this," she said softly. He nodded, straightening his tie, and walked in. The board members, including the ever-skeptical Mark Caldwell, watched as David stepped to the front of the room. The atmosphere was tense, but David's voice was steady as he began his presentation. He spoke about efficiency improvements, cost-saving strategies, and innovative engineering solutions that his new firm could bring to the company. His confidence grew with each word, and soon even Mark was leaning forward in interest. When David finished, a moment of silence hung in the air before one of the senior members spoke. "Impressive, Mr. Carter. We'll need some time to review, but I must say you've surprised us." David allowed himself a small smile. "Thank you. I look forward to working with you." As he turned to leave, Mark Caldwell called out, "I have to admit, Carter, I didn't think you had it in you." David met his gaze head-on. "Neither did I. But sometimes all you need is someone who does." He glanced at Olivia, who beamed with pride. Later that evening, as they stood outside the building, Olivia looked at David with a mixture of pride and warmth. "You were incredible in there," she said. David smiled. "I couldn't have done it without you." She shook her head. "No, David, this was all you. I just helped you see it." David exhaled, looking up at the city skyline. "It feels good to be back, to have a purpose again." Olivia slipped her hand into his. "And I'll be right here, cheering you on." In that moment, David realized something. His past no longer defined him. He had a future, and it was one worth fighting for. Months passed, and life took on a new rhythm for both David and Olivia. What once seemed like two completely different worlds had now seamlessly intertwined. David's consulting firm was thriving, bringing fresh, innovative solutions to businesses, including Bennett Enterprises, which became one of his biggest clients. Olivia, on the other hand, found herself embracing a new outlook on life, one where success wasn't measured by the number of deals closed, but by the relationships built along the way. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. They shared early morning coffee meetings that slowly transitioned into long evening walks, deep conversations about their dreams and fears, and quiet moments of support when challenges arose. David had found his purpose again, and Olivia had found something even more valuable: love. One bright afternoon, as the city buzzed with life, Olivia received a message from David asking her to meet him outside their favorite cafe. She arrived to find him standing by the curb, dressed in a crisp suit, a warm smile on his face. "What's this all about?" she asked, tilting her head curiously. David took her hand, his touch gentle yet firm. "Come with me, there's something I want to show you." He led her down the familiar streets, and Olivia soon realized where they were heading. Her heart skipped a beat when she recognized the place, the very street where they had first met, where he had helped her fix that flat tire on a rainy night. The memory flooded back, and she looked at him with a mix of amusement and emotion. "You're not seriously bringing me back here, are you?" David chuckled, his eyes full of warmth. "I am, because this is where everything changed for me." He took a deep breath, then slowly lowered himself to one knee, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small velvet box. Olivia gasped, covering her mouth in surprise. "Olivia Bennett, you walked into my life when I was at my lowest, and instead of walking away, you believed in me. You gave me a second chance, not just at my career, but at life. And because of you, I'm the man I was always meant to be." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes as David opened the box, revealing a stunning engagement ring. "I love you, Olivia. Will you marry me?" For a moment she was speechless, but then she smiled through her tears and whispered, "Yes. 1,000 times yes." David stood, slipping the ring onto her finger, and they embraced tightly, as if they never wanted to let go. Passers-by clapped and cheered, but for Olivia and David, it felt like they were the only two people in the world. As they stood there, hand in hand, looking out at the bustling city around them, Olivia whispered, "You know, I never imagined that night would lead us here." David grinned. "Life has a funny way of surprising us, doesn't it?" She nodded, leaning her head on his shoulder. "And I wouldn't change a thing." Their love story wasn't perfect, but it was real, built on trust, resilience, and the willingness to believe in second chances. The camera zooms out to capture them standing there, smiling at each other, a symbol that sometimes the most unexpected encounters lead to the most beautiful endings. And so, against all odds, David and Olivia found love in the most unexpected of places. Their journey proves that second chances, kindness, and believing in each other can change lives in ways we never imagined. Life has a way of bringing people together when they need it most, and sometimes, all it takes is one chance encounter to rewrite the future. If you enjoyed this heartwarming story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories for more incredible tales of love, hope, and inspiration. Thank you for watching, and remember, love can find us when we least expect it. See you in the next story.